Well, howdy folks, this here's your old partner, Magnus Booner. If you like food that is inspired by beer and travel, smack that subscribe button for me so you don't miss any of my silly videos. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these smoked birria burritos that are nothing short of fucking delicious. And we're going to get going right after the intro.
Gross.
So I was just at the grocery store and they had beef shank 50% off. I got about 6 pounds of it. Look at that. They are calling this a hind shank, so I guess that means it's the hind leg. If it's the hind leg, it might be from the lower part. I don't know, but you got a piece of bone in the middle with some lovely marrow in it, and then you've got this lovely beef around it. There's 2 of them in there. And this is one of the most flavorful cuts of meat you can buy, but it's tough, so you got to cook it down slow. You got to stew it until that connective tissue breaks down. Then it's one of the most delicious things you'll ever eat in your life. I've got my Morton kosher salt, and I'm going to give these a good sprinkling. We've got a chimney full of lump charcoal, and it's not getting any more ready. We've intentionally dumped this off to one side. This grill has this part that flips up. We're going to put that right over the top of these charcoals. Just like that. Let's get this sumbitch hot. That grill is up to 3 hundo, so let's clean it off. First, we're going to sear the shank right over the direct heat. That's going to create some caramelization, some melanoidins that are going to taste delicious. We'll go ahead and stage these other ones on the far side of the grill, and then we'll just rotate them around. We got a little bit of char and a whole lot of caramelization. Now we've got those seared and looking beautiful. Now we're going to smoke them. So we took them off the direct heat. We're going to get some wood chips on that. We're going to damper that down, smoke it for a couple hours. We've got mesquite wood chips. For beef like this, I like to use either oak, mesquite, or hickory. While those are smoking and getting happy, we're going to go inside and prepare this consomme for the birria so we can stew that. Now we're going to start prepping ingredients for the birria. We've got 4 of these guajilo chilies, 2 or 3 ancho chilies. We got about 5 cloves of garlic, 1 can of chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. We're going to use that adobo sauce. I suppose I should tell you, to prep these peppers, we glove up. You'll thank me for that when you're masturbating later. We remove the stems, the seeds, and some bits of membrane. It's always easy to add spice back. You can't take it back out. Alright, I've got my sexy as fuck vintage number 8 Griswold skillet preheated. Surface temp 350, 365. I'm going to toss these chilies in here and kind of toast them up a bit. If these smoke and you start coughing, turn down the heat. That means it's too hot. You want them to develop some color, but you don't want to burn them. That should go without saying, right? As those get toasted, we're going to toss them right in this blender. You can smell when they're toasted because the aromas really come out, which is why we're doing this. Alright, now we're going to go back over there. I've toasted my chilies and put them in the blender. To that I've added 1 can of chipotle peppers and adobo sauce. 3 ounces or half a can of tomato paste, a quarter of a cup apple cider vinegar, 5 cloves of garlic, 1 tablespoon dried oregano, 1 teaspoon cumin. I toasted the cumin and then ground it. 1 quart of Mexican lager, 6 whole cloves, 1.5 teaspoons onion powder. As luck would have it, they all fit in my favorite Dutch oven. Look at that. And they smell so smoky. Now we're going to add this birria. I believe we call it consommé at this point. Both beer and that vinegar and the tomatoes, well, it's all got a low pH. When this stews, that low pH is going to help break down that connective tissue. We'll rinse that with that excess beer. Now I think as that simmers, it'll all get mixed up, but I want to give it a little mix. I've got this burner preheating, and I've got the oven preheated at 250 degrees. Once this comes up on a boil, we're going to put it in the oven and simmer it. We do that because the thermostat of the oven at 250 will keep this on a nice, gentle boil. We don't have to worry about scorching. We will cover it, but we won't cover it tight. The reason for that is if you cover it tight, it's going to create pressure, and that's going to boil at a higher temperature. Without the cover, it's going to boil at about 212. Boiling at that lower temperature will result in a more moist feeling cut of meat. I don't remember why, but that's what Kenji Lopez Alt says in his book, The Food Lab. And so we listen to Kenji, because he's a real food scientist with real credentials. I'm going to add 1 whole cinnamon stick. I guess we'll call that 4 bay leaves, but they're pretty small. Alright, that's been stewing for about 4 hours. I'm pretty sure it's done. Let's take a look at it. Alright, that's falling off the bone, it's coming apart. We're going to let it sit there and cool for just a bit. Oh yeah, she fucks. Alright, this has been cooling for a bit. Let's separate the meat from the consommé. Pull out that bay leaf, we're done with it. So we can actually save this consommé in a jar in the freezer and use it next time we want to stew some birria. Or it makes a good dipping sauce. Just don't put that in a jar and freeze it, and then try to thaw it in a hot water bath and break your jar right before you're trying to make birria, because that's a bummer. Maybe use cold water and then gradually warm it up until you can use hot water to thaw that out. Just look at all that beautifulness. Alright, this has cooled a bit, so it's time to separate out the meat from the fat, from the connective tissue, figure out what connective tissue is edible that we want to keep. One of the most important things about this is these bones. You see that marrow inside of there? That is nothing short of rich and delicious and full of flavor. And when it gets mixed in with the pulled meat, it's going to add some epic richness. So we take a spoon and we poke that out of there. That's a bit of connective tissue there. We'll mince it up fine, and then we'll mince up this marrow. That'll get scraped into our bowl. Now we're just pulling this meat apart. So, the outside of that is almost caramely from the sear. It's going to need some salt, but that is so rich and delicious. You see this bit that was about around the bone? That's really good. And what I like to do is kind of mince that. It's very gelatinous. And so we mince that up and we mix the meat up. That adds a lot of richness to it. This shank isn't very fatty because the legs of the cow get a lot of work, but it is extremely rich nonetheless. I'm telling you that because there's not a lot of fat that I'm going to have to separate out of here. I've done this with the chuck short rib before. Delicious, but there's a lot of fat to separate out. So this is the leaner meat. This is connective tissue. It'll get minced. This just gets shredded. Connective tissue is collagen. Think gelatin. It's kind of slippery. It is the reason all these pulled meats are so delicious. Some people think fat is the reason. Some of those bits can almost be rubbery, but if you mince them up, they're not. They're delicious. Alright, we've processed all that shank into the bowl. We're going to clean up this mess, and then I'll show you the next process. Alright, we got this bowl full of pulled meat. Now the next part of the process. You probably noticed when I made that consommé, I did not add any fresh ground black pepper. That's because I didn't want to cook out the aromatics of it, so we're going to add it now. We'll use a spoon. This is going to make sure that all of that gelatinous bits is mixed in with the meat bits to make it all really rich and delicious. This is that consommé. I'm going to add this for the acidicness of it. Just about 2 spoonfuls. And I've got some kosher salt. I'm going to go in with 1 good 3-finger pinch. Maybe half a teaspoon. A few shakes of chipotle flakes. There's a trick I do sometimes when I'm trying to decide if something needs more salt. I'll take just a little bit of it, and I'll add just a little salt to it. And then I'll ask myself, does that taste better? If the answer is yes, we add a little more salt. We're going to go in with 1 more good 3-finger pinch. The spice and the black pepper, just right. Which is not very spicy at all. So you can feed these to everybody. But just spicy enough to make it a zingy. I always like to put hot sauce on the finished burrito. I think that's where we want it. We're not going to fuck with that anymore. I like to take the birria, combine it with rice, beans, and cheese, and roll it up into burritos. I put them in the freezer. I like to eat them when I come home drunk. I got this drunk burrito here. Got a hippy dippy IPA from my local craft brewery. Jalapeno sauce. Look at that fucking thing. Do you see those crispy bits? Yeah, get it. Fucking get it. It's gooey. It's smoky. It's fucking smoke shit. It's where it's at. Well, hey, hit me up here on the Instagram. You can also find me on the Twitter. This is my Twitter handle. Or hit me up on Facebook. I am Magnus Booner. And we'll be bringing you another epic video real soon. Pros.
And I don't want to hear any fucking more. Do you understand?